drills in particular?
Yeah, sure. I think I learned that I'm not really as good at it as I'd like to be. And I think if you do anything, that should be the way you're looking at it. But try to be realistic going into it. I've been around it long enough now to understand that anything you do, you're probably going to improve over time. But you have to be willing to get out of your comfort zone a little bit and push forward. So, you know, there's a lot of things that I can do better, just, you know, from a personal standpoint. But I think the main thing is just trying to do a better job of putting our football team in a position to be successful and to have a chance to succeed. And whether it's Scott's question about third downs or you know, whether it's a first down play call, just trying to make sure that we're using the right pieces the best way that we can, and trying to give ourselves a chance to win. Going back to your question, our goal is to win a Big Ten championship. How do we best get there, and what can I do to help us get there? What's my role on the team? So I think the biggest thing for me is learning how to do a better job of maximizing the role I'm in now, because it was new to me a year ago.
What do you know now that maybe you didn't know a year ago?
Well, I don't know where you want to start with that. You're going to have to help me out and be a little bit more. I know what it feels like to call playing a game. Didn't know that a year ago. I know what it's like to go through an installation in spring ball in training camp. As the guy tasked with putting all that together, I didn't know what that was like necessarily a year ago. So just things like that. And I don't know, you asked me a hard question. You'd have to catch me after a few beers or something like that to get like a real profound answer.
You also know what it's like to have an offense that's just rolling, like against Iowa State, against Ohio State, and then an offense that sputters like against Wisconsin. You talk about consistency. How hard is that? And is there a common denominator with teams that do somehow find a way to be consistent?
Yeah, I think typically teams that find a way to be consistent, you know, the common denominators are good teams that win a lot of games. I think another common denominator would be experience and cohesiveness. Consistency usually comes from those types of things. You know, limiting factors are inexperience, flux, injuries, things of that nature. So to some extent, you're trying to avoid as much of that as you can. Realistically, you have to know that's going to happen. So you want to try to build as much depth as you can, so there's not a huge drop off. But I think just the bottom line is, any way you slice it, a year ago, we were, you know, it was our first dance together, everybody. And now, you know, we're going into year two, and hopefully you have a little bit more singleness of purpose, a little bit more cohesiveness, whether it's the staff, the players, familiarity in the system, those kinds of things. Hopefully that'll help us build that. But I just think it's a never-ending process. And you know, going back to Mike's question to piggyback that, if you're talking about what you know a year later, you've been through some of those things. You've been there in those games where things are rolling. And it's kind of like, so I'm watching Star Wars with my son the other day, and I would use this analogy like, okay, when you're in a Wisconsin game, it's like you're the pilot of that little sad rebel ship that the opening of Star Wars, Darth Vader's Star Destroyer is closing on that ship, right? That's what the Wisconsin game feels like. Okay, but if it's the Ohio State game or the Nebraska game, then you're Luke Skywalker making the trench run, right, in the Death Star. Everything's going to go right. Don't worry about it. You know, use the Force, Luke. You'll be all right. Call whatever you want. So you learn what those things feel like. But I think the most important thing is once you get to the end of that and you have those learning experiences, you just kind of learn that some of those things are out of your control. And what you need to focus on is doing what you can do as well as you can do it.